Christine Eartheart. Welcome to Something Super Spiritual. I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. It is an honor and joy to get to be here with you.
It's an honor and joy to have you here with me. You guys, Christine is a ball of joy, a bright light, a healer, a Reiki master teacher, glitter that this world is so desperately in needing. You sparkle, honey. You do. You sparkle, and I love it.
Thanks for your kind and loving words and seeing me through your beautiful heart.
Oh, thank you. So, you know what? Let's start at the beginning. What was your healing journey like? How did you end up to being this amazing facilitator? And you work with so many people. I got to tell you a quick story first. A really close friend of mine, Sue Brassel, went to your workshops earlier this year, I think in April and June, and she was sending me pictures, and I was blown away by how many people you have in your weekends. Like 40 or 50. I mean, I was trying to count and I lost count in there. And it's so exciting to me because, I went through my Reiki first weekend in November 2006. And there were, I think, 2 or 3 of us in that little living room. And to see it, like what you are offering and your service, it's gotten out there. It's spread. The light is spreading, and it's just like, yes. So anyway, I just had to tell you that. I just think it's magnificent. So yeah, please tell us where you came from.
So much. And I'm so grateful that Sue connected us and for all the people that I have the great privilege of getting to be on the journey with. So, really growing up, my mom, I'll start here. She is deeply spiritual. I was raised in a Catholic home, and I would listen to her stories and just see, like, kind of quietly but devotedly, her practices. And I had this longing inside of me to feel what she felt. And I didn't feel it by going to church, or I went to catechism, which I honor so wholeheartedly. And I still had this longing, though, that wasn't fulfilled. And so when I was in high school, I was like, I want to connect to whatever that is. So I truly went in the yellow pages. The yellow pages were like a thing then. There wasn't Googling. So I went in the yellow pages under like spirituality and religion. And I just started every single week. I would go to different places, and I had so many diverse experiences through that. And I started to wake up to realizing, like, oh, there's so many different pathways to finding God or love or the universe or source or spirit, whatever name we want to call this. And there were some places that I felt a sense of home. And so I ended up creating an altar in our basement when I was in high school. And I did in my senior year, like my kind of senior project was on world religions. And then I went off to college, and I love writing. So my dad was trying to steer me into practical directions. So I ended up going to college initially for journalism, but during freshman orientation, I discovered that I could actually study spirituality. And I was like, well, that sounds like way more fun. And so I ended up taking classes in folklore and religious studies that were, as I wanted to learn as much as I could about as many different spiritual and faith traditions as possible, indigenous ones, more of the structured world religions. And I fell more in love with learning than I ever had in my life. And it was an embodied experiential journey. And I was applying those teachings to whatever way I was experiencing. So I, growing up, had a really, really strong inner critic and was a perfectionist and had shame. And people, now that I speak about joy, people are like, the 3 questions I get asked the most are, 1, have you always been this happy? And I'm like, no, I've not always been this happy. I did not come out of the womb like laughing. And the second one, people are like, are you always this happy? And to which I also, even though I'm so grateful to now experience really an extraordinary amount of joy. I also am a wholehearted advocate and proponent of course, feeling all of our beautiful, essential feelings. And then the third question is usually like, how do you experience so much joy? And so through, though, that journey of really in my kind of diving into spirituality, I really fell wildly in love with how we can create meaning in our lives. Like life isn't just as we see it. Like we get to be the makers of meaning and turn anything we're experiencing into something deeply purposeful that connects us to our innermost being and to what is available all around us in every moment. And so I would wake up early and I would study. I never missed a class. I would sit in the front row. I had no idea where in the world it was going to lead me in life, but I knew that it was exactly where I needed to be. And then I moved to California afterwards, and I knew nothing about Reiki. For whatever reason, I'm so grateful that I learned early on that when I follow my heart, it really doesn't lead us astray. And so I started collecting evidence of that early on. I so understand if people don't have much evidence, they don't have other loved ones who have done that. It's hard to believe that doing that is a safe thing to do. It can seem terrifying. Yeah. Like, well, this is the much more well-paved, proven pathway. Other people will approve of it. I'll get accolades. I'll have security, whatever it might be. And so there has been some part of me that has been willing to take those leaps early on. And so now I have this mass amount of evidence, like, oh, there's no other way to do it. So I moved to California. I started just diving into healing and transformation, Reiki, which I knew nothing about, but I had that knowing like there's something there. And so anyway, so many other serendipitous moments came together. And that was my first kind of entryway into hands-on healing was through Reiki.
You know, it's true. The serendipitous moments, I mean, synchronicity upon synchronicity upon synchronicity. And when you start to become aware of that almost magical feeling, it's like, you know, how is this? What just happened? How did that happen? You know, and you're really like looking at it like, holy cow, but it's not an accident. You know, it's not just a quote coincidence. And yeah, I love that. I love that feeling. What year was this for you? Was this when were you still out of college?
Yeah. Well, so I graduated from college in 2003.
Okay.
And so it's 2004 when I learned Reiki.
Okay. So relatively soon after college. Okay. So I love that. I love your I guess your tenacity, like to in high school to look up other places of spirituality and to just take it upon yourself to roll over to wherever and just see what's going on over there on the other side of the street. That is so amazing. I mean, if that just doesn't tell you right there from that young age, like you were feeling it, you were recognizing the tug of spirit, following those little breadcrumbs, noticing probably the universal similarities in all of them, you know, it's just very cool.
Well, thanks. I'm so grateful. And I think it's like contagious in the best of ways sometimes when we get to witness someone who is so deeply fulfilled spiritually and is really devoted to their practice, which could be a zillion different things.
Totally.
You know, for a lot of us, it helps wake us up to what might be possible and available beyond our to-do lists and the everyday logistics and old outdated patterns. Like, oh my goodness, there is this multidimensional nature to who we are. And so I'm just so thankful for people who allowed me to see what was possible, that really invited me to go on my own journey to see like what that looked like for me. So thanks to everyone out there who is, you know, a beacon of that for others.
100%. Your first Reiki weekend, your first attunement, like what was your first weekend like?
Yeah, so great question. I actually did an apprenticeship, so it was just me. So very, very different than the context that I am blessed to teach in now. So I met this woman, Audrey, who I just was drawn to her. And when I went to California, I started a women's circle because I'm a bit of a circle junkie. So wherever I go, I love to like bring people together in a circle because I just think the amount of healing and transformation and learning and wisdom that we can gather in circles is awe-inspiring. So I had moved out there. I was like, well, circle time. So I invited Audrey to be part of this circle, and she would just mention Reiki every now and then, and I would just feel something inside of my heart and my being. And so I ended up just asking her more about it. And she graciously offered to do an apprenticeship with me because she wasn't teaching classes at the time. And so then we just met every week, the two of us. And I had no idea like how it would utterly change my life. And I was living in California, and I was, just on this quest and trying things on and going to workshops all the time and tuning into what resonated and what didn't. And it was undeniable. Like I would have just really busy thoughts, stress thoughts, anxious thoughts, and then my mind would just go quiet, not only in receiving Reiki, but also in giving Reiki. And at the time I was working with individuals experiencing homelessness. And I was just so deeply touched by how we all have this innate capacity to heal, no matter who we are or where we are in life, no matter our age, our socioeconomic status, our educational background, our cultural background. Like we are all born with this ability to facilitate healing. And so I marveled at what was opening up, and it was so undeniable. And then when I started sharing it, my parents, who are so wonderful and so different, I was always their colorful child. And so it's kind of like, okay, what's she getting into next?
Yeah.
And when I said I was into Reiki, it was just starting to become a little bit more like in mainstream culture, little bits here and there. And they were so gracious enough to let me share it with them. And they were noticing just relief, like from tennis elbow or like sinus relief. They still refer back to like that initial time. And so that's what it was for me as well. When I experienced my attunement and I was receiving Reiki from Audrey, I was like, this is undeniable. It's not because I want it to be. It's like I could feel the energy moving throughout me. I could just feel these shifts. I was in pain and my pain would go away. I was in, distress. And all of a sudden I felt this overwhelming peace. I just felt connected to who I am. And I felt expansive.
Yeah. 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 It changed my life too. I talk about it so often on my show. My mother and my grandmother have both struggled for years. My grandmother's long gone, but my mom's still here, and they struggle with fibromyalgia, osteoarthritis, degenerative disc disease. I mean, all of that. That's more than enough, right? But the pain and the lack of knowledge about fibromyalgia, especially back in the day, no treatments, no pills, nothing would help, And after a couple decades of experiencing this, in 2006, I was getting a massage one day, and the massage practitioner, she says, after about 15 minutes, she says, you know what? I think I'm supposed to do Reiki with you. And I said, okay, what's Reiki? And so she explained it to me, and I said, all right, cool, go. And so she starts at the back of my head, I'm laying face up, and all of a sudden I'm feeling this wave of heat from head to toe and back and head to toe. And it's just felt like this warm wave. And then it felt like almost like an electromagnetic, like when your hair stands up on end, you're like when you rub a balloon, like a static electricity. Like it felt like a static electricity almost. But I couldn't explain it because I couldn't apply it to, I couldn't see anything. It wasn't tangible. You know what I mean? So I was like, what is happening? And I often say too, it was like 10,000 butterflies were flapping their wings really, really close to my skin, but not touching my skin. And I was like, wow. So I had to ask her 3 times to spell it for me so that I could remember. And I left her and went right home to Google and found a Reiki master. And a couple months later, I was on November 11th, 2006, actually, I was in my level 1 weekend with my Reiki master. And, what I didn't know, I had no clue, was that the side effect for me was that it would ignite all the spiritual senses, kablam, all at once. And, my Reiki master asked me at the end of that first weekend, she said, I want you to sit with yourself every day for 30 days, for an hour every day, and give yourself a Reiki treatment. So, I do. I go into my walk-in closet with my maybe I brought a crystal or a couple with me, and maybe some cards and some music and incense, and I would sit in there. And she told me, she said, I want you to let the energy teach you. I want you to let it just flow through you. I want you to understand the feeling of it compared to the feeling of your own energy, and watch and feel them merge, and just know the difference. And it'll start to teach you. So right away, I'm sitting there cross-legged and doing my thing, right? And I'm seeing beings. I'm seeing massive light shows behind my closed eyelids. I'm feeling beings around me. I'm hearing things. I'm so I would come out of this day after day after day confused, because and I would stop and think to myself, okay, I know I wasn't dreaming. There's no way I could have fallen asleep. I was sitting upright. If I fell asleep and my hands were here, I would have dropped. I would have slipped. You know what I mean? And I know I wasn't sleeping. So about 2 weeks later, I said to my Reiki master, I was telling her what happened. And she just smiled and she said, you're opening up to spirit. So, and then after that, after becoming attuned to level 2 and so forth, doing Reiki treatments with people, their loved ones started coming in. And that's I thought I was going to be doing Reiki for the rest of my life, but then spirit, had another plan for me, and it's still part of my life, very much a part of my life. But it was the mediumship where, that's where I was started to happen. And so, yeah. And fast forward here, 16, 17, 18 years later, and I just wanted to scream it from a mountaintop and share everything with everybody and share everybody with everybody. And here we are, and I get to share you with everybody.
What an incredible story. I love that it was a whole being experience that was beyond what you were even anticipating or imagining, and how it's opened up pathways in your life that you didn't see coming, and that you just so surrendered to that and opened so fully. It's
truly, yeah, it's truly amazing. It really is. And what I've noticed more and more, in 2006, there weren't many of us, we were explaining Reiki, from the very beginning of what Reiki is, to people going, what? Compared to now, most people, a lot of people have heard of it and might not know much about it, but they've heard of it. Right. And it's just incredible to watch the progression of the awakening that we're all going through, culturally, collectively, and it's just delicious.
It sure is. Thanks for being a part of it. Yes, it really is. I love to live in the land of possibilities, and I feel like things like Reiki really do awaken us to what's available for everyone.
Yeah.
I love that it's totally free. We have access to it no matter where we are, what we're doing, and the more that we share it, the more it actually grows inside of us as well. So it's the best. Thanks for sharing your journey.
Well, thank you for asking. Okay, so let's talk more about what you do. So when in your journey did you start to decide that teaching was your thing? And I can see behind you, your place is just absolutely beautiful. I saw Sue's pictures, and it's the energy in it is the vibe is just peaceful and healing, and just like the universe is giving you a big hug. That's what it feels like. So how did that come about with you? Did you start, with one and two people, or did you just go, hey, let's get as many people in here right away?
Well, you are a delight. I'm so glad it feels like a hug. That is exactly my wish for anybody that comes here to our healing center. So I started off just practicing. And I think like so many, when they first learn Reiki, it's like, I just wanted to give Reiki to anybody, anything that would be open to it or benefit from it, who I could really serve, because I was so in love with it.
Yeah.
And so I was doing just sessions. And then every day that I wake up, I go to my altar and I really just ask. It's like, how can I use this precious gift of life today to best love and serve the world? And then I just listen in a way that brings me joy along the way. And I really see life as this just grand treasure hunt. And I just go to my meditation every morning to get like, okay, what's my next little clue? And I'll get my divine assignment for the day and just follow that. And I just felt called to really share it. There's a bit of me that I like love maximizing. Like I love making the most of moments, of days, of life. And so the thought of getting to help other people awaken to their healing gifts, and the thought of them then being out there, spreading their love and their lights and healing, just lights me up so much. And so not a couple years after just practicing, I then decided to teach. And I initially, I remember I didn't have a website. I didn't have the workshop planned, but I wanted to raise money for this cause. And so I was like, well, this is the perfect reason. And I just love that so often it's how we can be of contribution and service kind of allows us to transcend our own limiting beliefs or fears or self-doubt. And so I was like, all right, I'm just going to do this. I created a flyer and I put a website on it, and I didn't have the website created yet. And I was like, okay, this is, a notion I believe so much in is that we can either shrink in proportion to our fears or grow in proportion to our dreams. And I was like, okay, this is a calling. And so I'm just going to invite, any part of what's inside of me to really rise to this and just called upon spiritual support and put it out there. And we met in our living room at home and in a different home than we're in now. And it was, of course, as it always is, the perfect collection of people. And then it really did take on a life of its own. But there were in the beginning, there were a workshop where there would be 4 people in our living room. And I just kind of trusted the perfect people would show up. And yes, now, sometimes we have 60 people, at them. We're kind of capped at 60. And just so that we have this incredible team, we call them the Reiki angels, of people who are going through their Reiki master teacher apprenticeship, who are there to offer amazing support. So everyone just feels held in love. So it just kept growing and evolving. And whenever people are going through their master teacher apprenticeship, I will let them know, because sometimes now people see these, larger events that I co-create, and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to begin. I'm like, oh my gosh, now we begin exactly where we are, and then just follow the trail of how we're meant to serve and what that's meant to look like. And so it took on a life of its own in ways that I never imagined that it would. And so I'm so grateful. And truly, I fall in love with the unique expression of Reiki through every single person that comes. And that's my highest joy now. As much as I love doing Reiki sessions, it really is getting to watch others discover their own healing hands.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. It is so beautiful to watch people experience this for the first time and experience that unknown or inexplainable, like you feel it, it, but it's so new and it's hard to describe, but it's there, and just watching them experience all of this, and yeah, it's so rewarding. So rewarding.
It really is. And I always invite people, come in with your questions, come in with your doubts. They're all welcome here. I want people to experiment and find out for themselves, not because I told them, but because they know without a doubt that it works, that they get to be this vessel for healing and love in the world. And it really is remarkable. People that have absolutely no background in any sort of healing arts, maybe their friend said, hey, you want to come? And they're like, sure, I'm free that weekend, to watch them see what they're able to facilitate and co-create with the person they're sharing Reiki with touches my heart deeply.
You know what else touches my heart deeply?
What?
I love giving Reiki to animals, pets.
Yes.
They, they're so wide open, as we know. But there is this, you can feel their receiving and their immense joy and peace in receiving. And they just melt into, just kind of melt into you. And what makes me laugh are cats, because when cats are done, they're done. They're like, all right, that's enough.
Totally.
Yeah, I had
those are sacred moments.
Oh, totally. And I think it also helps develop the the psychic bond and that animal communication between us, the communication between us. It absolutely, what was so awesome for me personally when I started to do this show, finding so many other people with the same stories, that they started to open up too, that the Reiki really like had this profound effect on them in such a way where just like it was their awakening, so to speak, and there's just more and more of us out there waking up this way.
For sure. Yes, it is such a catalyst. And I find that for a lot of people, it's like, well, this is possible. What else is possible? Waking up to our own capacity to heal our own bodies, like brilliance for kind of physical healing, and then also the spiritual realms and emotionally, it really is opening and stepping into a whole nother world. So yes, I love seeing that in people.
It's true. You had mentioned capacity for healing. So would you please share with us like one or two of your like the stories that just really stuck with you, the experiences, the miraculous witnessing of this happening right in front of you? You just, that spiritual miracle of healing.
Yeah, so happy to share. Well, one that's coming to me right now, because as we're reflecting on our kind of early days of first beginning to really recognize our spiritual nature and how we have an energy field that extends beyond us, and that we are these multidimensional vast beings, like interconnected, and talking about animals. So just after I had learned Reiki and was in a time of just heightened sensitivity, as you're speaking of just feeling like everything was sort of speaking, like I just felt more connected, and in a very grounded way, but in a way that was just like felt more mystical, like the trees, animals, like I just felt so much more connected. And so I went on a vision quest out in California. So it was a 24-hour solo. And so I was without shelter, I was without food. So without shelter to kind of experience vulnerability, without food to experience emptiness. And then you go solo to experience, aloneness and just connecting to source. And I had a guide on the journey, but he wasn't actually with me. But there were three of us that kind of drove there together. And then we set out. We had been guided, but again, he was at home. And so a vision quest really kind of marks a moment in your life oftentimes. And so I had kind of come prepared to do this burial of all the things that I was letting go of, to do this conscious rebirthing of everything that I was stepping into, with everything that I learned from Reiki, and just wanting to, like what I was feeling with Reiki, I just wanted to leave behind anything that stood in the way, like any of the barriers to love and to feeling that sense of inner freedom that I long to feel. And so I was out there on this vision quest. And when I first arrived, there were like flies all around my head, which just felt completely symbolic of like my busy thoughts. I was like, here, there's beauty all around me. And then there's just like flies really close. So everything becomes a mirror and part of the meditation. So like there were so many moments. And then, so I go to bed at night. I had this like kind of conscious burial ritual. And then I went to bed. I laid out in this giant rock formation. And in the middle of the night, I like heard these footsteps. But I just like, it kind of woke me up and startled me a little bit, but I was like, oh, it must just be to look at the stars. Like the stars were so magnificent. So I kind of went back to sleep. And then I was waking up in the morning, preparing to do this kind of rebirthing ritual that I was going to do. And I was laying on my side, and all of a sudden these footsteps were like, home, 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 getting closer and closer and closer to me, until there was a mountain lion. I'm laying on my side on this rock formation. There's a mountain lion like an inch from my body. So I've never before, and I've never since, heard my heart beat outside my body. Like I actually heard it, which others will know this feeling, but I had never had. I was like, oh my gosh, it's really loud, like slightly hyperventilating. So I was like, and I instantly, my reflex was surround myself in this bubble of Reiki light. I mean, it was in such a practice of mine, and we'll never know how this story would have played out, right? Had this not happened, like I will never know. And that was my reflex, is like everything is energy, everything is communicating. Like there are these signals we're sending out all the time that we're picking up on. So I instantly surrounded myself in this Reiki bubble of light and started sending love to this mountain lion. So it is here. And I'm also putting out prayer. So we had this like logistical prep class, a spiritual class, and then also prep, like what to do if you see different animals. And I was like, okay, what do I do when I see a mountain lion? And all I remember is like, you get really big and make a lot of sound. I was like, well, what do you do when you're laying flat on the ground in like half of a sleeping bag? So I'm just like on my side, and I was started just like, please give me some sort of sign. That was, again, I was in a very spiritual orientation. So I was looking for a sign, right? Like some sort of sign, some sign. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? The mountain lion then sticks its nose. I promise this is 100% truthful. It took its nose into my body and it sniffed me from head to toe. So again, I'm like,
oh my gosh.
And I just started, again, I was just imagining Reiki emanating from my body and sending it out through all of my pores and sending signals to the mountain lion. Like, I am your sister. I'm coming with love. And also like, sending out just like prayers for any sort of signs. I'm still like on my side, couldn't even move if I wanted to probably, but I was like, do I turn to face it or do I get up? What do I do? And then it started stroking my hair. It just started putting its claw through my hair. And so, which was in retrospect, actually such a nurturing activity. I mean, it was such a kind, loving thing. And I started then actually having a thought of like, oh, this might hurt. Like, I think it might, this is actually how I'm going to go. I didn't think this is what was going to happen, but I think this might actually be the moment. So I started sending like signaled out to my now husband, my parents at the time, this Vision Quest guide, just wanting to release and free them from anything. And so I'm still here. I'm like, wait, praying for a sign. And my book that I'm looking at, that I was like preparing, reading this book in Course in Miracles before I was going to do this rebirthing ritual. And it said a line in bold. It actually says, attack what torments you. Turns out it says what not to do. But for some reason I was like, I think that's it. So I turned and faced the mountain lion and it jumped over the ledge. And it was like everything that I went on the Vision Quest for. It was like I turned to face my fear and my fear totally disappeared. And it was like feeding hour, it was dawn. So anyway, it was one of the most mystical moments of my life. And it was 100% influenced by Reiki. And I then blew the whistle and I called in the other two and we saw the tracks there. And my life really has never been the same ever since. That's 20 years ago. I've had a mountain lion on my altar and I'm continually reminded of that lesson of like turning to face our fears with love, and the illusion falls away, and feeling more alive in that moment than I ever had before. And also just our connectedness. And I have to believe that there was something energetically about our communication, because people had just been attacked just recently. I was aware of that with mountain lions. Anyway, I am forever infinitely grateful. So that was definitely one of the miracle stories soon after my Reiki attunement. So thanks for letting me share that.
That is amazing. Thank you for sharing. I had chilly bumps from head to toe. I started to feel emotional. It's like, it's just like to have been given that. Oh, wow. And they're so beautiful. And like, yeah. I mean, to have that, like your heartbeat, like I can only imagine, like, holy cow. Oh, but yeah, after it's all said and done, that is amazing.
It's true. It's like the scariest moment and also one of the most beautiful moments. Yes.
Totally.
Both. Yes.
Ooh, wow. Okay. Where do we go from there? That was awesome.
Thanks for bearing witness to that.
This is great story time. Tell another.
Well, I mean, I would say really what I love is when I'm teaching and, it sounds like have these exact same experiences of people that, come in with like, am I going to be able to do this? Or I'm not especially healthy or healed. So who am I to share this with others? And they'll partner up with someone they've never met before. And they'll have this vision of some arbitrary symbol or of a dragon or something. And they're like, oh, I have a dragon tattoo right here. And like, I mean, even like the little things like that, or they'll have a vision of some woman that they'll describe. And it's like, oh, that's my grandma. She just passed last month. Or like they'll pick up on things. So it's just like the mountain lion story where I felt like I was in communication, that we are all so much more connected. Like the veil is so much thinner than we realize. And so just watching people that have never met before, having these moments of communion, and how they can show up for each other with so much love. And then them feeling like, oh my gosh, my hands are so hot. And there are just these faucets of like love and healing flowing forth from me. And people that are, they come in, they have sciatica pain, and they're like, I haven't felt this good. I mean, from one session with someone that just learned Reiki, like, oh my gosh, the pain is gone right now, or my headache's gone, or I've been feeling just plagued by this depression and it's lifted. And this isn't from me sharing Reiki, someone that's been doing it, for 20 years. This is like from somebody that truly just learned it that morning. And so like that lights me up so, so much, like as much as anything. I certainly have stories of people on my table.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it isn't about me though. It's like, there is
No.
this benevolent, infinite source of life-giving energy here to flow freely into any of us and through us and from us for the greater good of all. And it replenishes us and renews us, like plugging into the life socket of the universe. And it is so deeply healing, and we don't have to get it perfect. And so that's what I love. I mean, certainly people that, students that have tumors and they get so inspired after their training, like I'm going to do self-healing now for the next 30 days and coordinate to have group healing, and they'll go when the tumor's been, is no longer there. So certainly stories like that. And it's always like, we don't want to, of course, promise any stories like that, and just trust however it unfolds. And almost everyone at least has the experience of being what we call Reiki bliss bombed. I love seeing people like before and after Reiki, just the altered state and
Totally.
what happens, get to go into that state of deep, deep relaxation, how we just reconnect to our hearts and our intuition, and pain can just be freed, pain that we've held on to emotionally, physically, spiritually, and in a way that is so pleasurable. So sometimes it can be like hard work doing the healing. And I get lit up about the different healing techniques and modalities that are also like so yummy, so pleasurable, and it's so gentle. And it is like, I like you, like all the sensations, I could just get energy work all the time. I've never found anything that replenishes me like it does. And just the feeling of the tingles and the swirls, and oh my gosh, it feels like there's 30 hands on my body and there are only 2. So yeah, but witnessing others, I think, is like my favorite miracle.
Okay, you said something in there that struck a chord. Like people coming in thinking, who am I to be doing this? Can I even do it? Is this even possible? What do you say? Because I've experienced this many times. What do you say to those who may have gone through level 1, and they come out disappointed, like, well, my hands don't get hot, or well, I don't feel anything, or I don't, it's not working for me, or I'm not good at it. What's your response to that?
Yes. Well, what I love when someone has that, I mean, so beautiful that they're being honest, and I give them a whole lot of empathy, because those can be moments that can just spiral people into familiar self-doubt. And so very often somebody will have that experience as the giver, and the receiver is like, oh my gosh, you were on my knee and it got so hot. And oh my gosh, my heart all of a sudden opened. So people who are giving, like, it actually doesn't match the experience of the person who's receiving. And so someone could feel nothing as a giver, like, I don't feel any energy. And then I'll be like, well, how is it for you receiving it? And they're like, it was so calming and relaxing. And so also just to trust, and I think that's all of us in life, right? We can just really overlook and underestimate the impact that we have, because we're so in our heads and our fears and misunderstandings about who we are. And so that, and then also, just to keep trusting it and keep showing up, and like all things, the more that we do them, the more that we open up. When I first started, what I was experiencing versus like now what I can feel, like I would hear other people say, like, put my hands on something, I could just feel the energy. I'm like, well, I think, is this energy? Is this what I'm feeling?
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, I know just what they mean. And so to really just to trust it. And it really is, I mean, I think our greatest barrier is self-doubt, to hearing our intuition, to the energy flowing through us. So the very thing that we're laying on top of our experience is the very thing that's going to stand in the way of us actually getting to have, that moment of opening. And so I believe with every bit of my being, I think I have conviction that every single person is capable of facilitating extraordinary healing. I've
100%.
never met anyone that doesn't. If
Yeah.
they just like lean in a little bit more and get a
Yeah.
little more curious, and also open to the possibility that maybe they thought they didn't feel anything and a lot more was happening than they just are used to feeling. Like their nervous system might not be super sensitive to feeling it.
Yeah. Yeah. I say the same thing. You know, if you're standing there and you're not feeling anything or feeling what you think you should be feeling, you know, let's watch our expectations and demands, because you might be expecting something, and missing what is actually there, you know, and to trust. There's, you know, if you're standing there and you feel like you're standing there doing nothing, I absolutely promise you it is flowing through you, whether you realize it or not. And like you said, you know, the person that's receiving, you know, ask them afterwards what it was like for them. And you'll be like, oh, it was working, you know? Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, I had, so this leads me into my next question. I want to give you this example and then hear what you have to say. So early on, this was probably 2007. I had a gal come to me. I didn't know what was wrong with her. I didn't know what illness she had or how she struggled or anything. But she showed up for her treatment, she and her husband. And her husband waited for her in my living room. And we went back to my room where my table was. And when she showed up, she was yellow. I mean, literally yellow tint to her whole being. And energetically, she just looked exhausted and overwhelmed, and you know what I mean? And I was so fresh, you know, I just noticed this, and I didn't say anything, but anyway, she was grateful to be there. So she gets on the table, and afterwards, when I was going to help her sit up, you know, on the table after it was over with, I think I must have sat down to move something so I could step over to her or walk around the table. But all of a sudden, she just popped up on her own, and her skin, she was clear. She was back to her normal skin tone. It was like she was lit up. She was, her energy was back. Like she was actually moving, like normally moving, not moving like somebody in pain, you know? And I was like, I looked at her and I was like, how do you feel? And she goes, I feel amazing. And I was like, well, I can see that, but holy cow. And so, she puts her shoes back on and we walk out to her husband, and her husband looks at her from my couch, and he does a double take, and he's like, babe, you look like a completely different girl. And she totally did. So what I had come to find out was that she had struggled with lupus, and she had this remarkable, miraculous healing. And I was so blown away. I didn't really know what lupus was back then. You know, I had to actually look it up. I didn't know anybody with it, and it was kind of new to my, and I was so touched on my insides. Like, you know, like when you're speechless and you're just like, they left, and I just had to sit there and cry. I think I cried for 15 minutes. It was just that overwhelming sense of awe and joy and awe, you know? So there are times when this happens, this healing happens, and there are times where it doesn't. And those people say, well, why? You know, why not? Why? You know? And so I'm curious, what do you say to those people?
About kind of like why sometimes do we wish with every fiber of our being that someone could experience healing and it's not happening? Yeah, which is a painful and confusing and tender place to be in, especially when we hear these stories of what's possible and available and these other miracle stories. And it can just feel so deeply unfair and unjust and really devastating, especially for someone who like believes in and has hope. It can kind of come crashing down, and people can feel like failures if they're the ones who are helping to share Reiki or healing or support with another person. Like, why couldn't I have done more? So we put lots of pressure. If you are the person having some sort of health challenge or a loved one is, oh my goodness, yes. So yeah, that's what you're kind of referring to.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just say, like, we are all on such a different journey here at Earth School, and there are so many different factors, I think, beyond what we could possibly imagine, some that have come down through many generations, different, imprints, and there's just so many layers to our healing journey. And so I think that it is like that sweet spot of showing up with wholeheartedness, with so much hope, with enthusiasm, with a belief in, like so much more is possible than we can even imagine. We know no limits to this work, like to hold that on one side, and then just to hold total surrender and total trust and the spiritual journey of learning to love and accept exactly where we are. And I get that is not always an easy thing to do. It's something that it's hard to put on anybody else. I know for me in my own health journey, it's like been like, okay, what is the spiritual gift in this? So it's still that same, like looking for the spiritual gift. And is that spiritual gift healing, or is it, an opportunity to like forgive someone or something? It's like always just listening to, wherever there is grace, because there's grace somewhere, whether there's something, some conversation for us to have or something to access inside of ourselves. But nobody is failing in any way whatsoever. And it really is trusting our journey. Just like, we're going to trust our journey when it goes the way that we want it to. It's like, oh, this is great. It led just where I wanted to. It's like also applying that to every area of life and just going with it. And yeah.
And thank you for that. Yes. And here's another thing that I just want to add to that, based from other experiences that I know you'll understand. I did have that experience with somebody. I think it was stage 4 cancer. I don't remember where the cancer was. But they were really, they were really hopeful and trustful and really showing up with that hope, when, after a treatment or 2 or 3 or whatever it was, it wasn't getting smaller. It wasn't the tumor or whatever it was. However, after the progression and the lady passed, her daughter came to me and she wanted to tell me that, in spite of that not healing the cancer, what it did was that her mother was never at a point of such fear after the Reiki. Like it did something to her emotionally, mentally, anxiety, fear, where it just kind of like cleared all of that, to where, so that the last remaining portion of her life, even though she didn't heal physically, she was never in the same amount of pain emotionally and mentally. The fear, the anxiety, the unknown seemed to wash away, and she was at a level of peace and calm for the remaining days. And so her daughter came to me and just really wanted to share that with me, in spite of their feeling disappointment in the moment, when they obviously realized it was still there and that itself wasn't going away. So that's my, the healing energy is working on all levels, on levels that we can't possibly know.
So that is the essence of it right there, what you're saying. It's so beautiful that it's less about looking at the outcome maybe that we were hoping for, and looking, instead of just focusing there, recognizing all the beautiful, wonderful healing things that were happening, and how there was so much more peace, so much more love in the journey. So thanks for sharing that story. And that resonates entirely with me.
So for all of you out there who have been exploring and wondering, and maybe even having these questions, where, I don't feel anything, it's okay. It's still happening. It's totally okay. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. And for those of you who have had these sessions and we're hoping for back pain to clear up, or cancer to clear up, or whatever it might be, anxiety to disappear, it's still healing on some level. So just keep going, keep going, keep going.
Blessed be.
Christine, thank you so much for coming.
It has been such a gift and treat. Thank you so much for having me.
Before we go, please let everybody know where they can find you, what events you have coming up, classes, courses, workshops, retreats. What would you like to share with everybody? What do you have coming up?
Thanks for asking. So in October, there is a Reiki training. So I teach Reiki here in Bloomington, Indiana. People come in from all over. I teach either here at our healing center or at the Tibetan Mongolian Buddhist Cultural Center, which is amazing. It's where the Dalai Lama comes and teaches and stays when he visits. It's a really, really special place. So the one in October will be there. And that's level 1 and 2. So if anybody wants to awaken to their healing hands, I warmly, warmly welcome you. And that is joypotential.com. And then you just do /Reiki. So Joy Potential. And I also am now training people to become certified Joy Potential coaches. And so it's really my healing kind of modality that I've been developing over the years to help any area that we feel out of alignment that's really standing in the way, where we feel like we long for pursuing our dreams or integrating these different parts of our lives or showing up in a way that feels true to our hearts and our souls, all these things that we long for. And it feels like there's some part of us holding us back. It's about learning to free that part of us so all of us can be in alignment, moving in this glorious upward spiral. So that, and then my husband and I run, it's called the Center for Thriving Relationships. That's my other passion. And we have a couples retreat coming up in November called Thrive in Love. So it's a weekend retreat. If anybody wants to learn the kind of scientifically backed roadmap for how to create a thriving relationship, it's really fun. It's full of heart and also the science and research on relationships. So that website is centerthrive.com. So, or if you just search Center for Thriving Relationships, will surely come up. Or anybody that wants to become a relationship coach, we do all things relationships over there, and then all things kind of healing and joy at Joy Potential. So would be honored and thrilled to connect with anybody it can serve.
Do you do anything online? Do you do any courses online?
Yep. Yeah, I sure do, particularly with the relationship work. So we do online relationship courses or a relationship coach certification that is entirely online. More of the joy stuff is more, and Reiki and healing is more in person. I love the ritual and ceremony and coming together. Yes.
I love ritual. I mean, you know, give me some sage wands and some crystals. I'll throw a crystal grid down and I'll jump around it and call in the fairies and the, you know, oh yeah, I'll go all out. I love a ritual.
Yes, we would have fun playing and delighting in sacred space together. I have no doubt.
Totally. Okay, so before we say goodbye, what would you like to leave everybody with, our viewers and our listeners? What sort of words of wisdom would you like to leave everybody with regard to Reiki and healing and the love and the joy?
Thanks for asking. Well, something that is a concept that's near and dear to my heart. I'm actually working on a book right now called Grow the Good. And I just think, you know, we're at a time that a lot of people either feel in your own life so many challenges, or in the world so many challenges. It's easy to feel a lack of hope or just to be disenchanted with humanity. And my passion, it's like, rather than ignoring, we don't want to ignore the challenge or deny it or judge it or suppress it. We want to absolutely bring it out into the light. And then we also want to dilute it by growing the good so exponentially around it that it really dilutes in comparison. And so I find that whenever there's something isn't working in our lives, it helps to wake us up to something we really value and something that we really want to experience more of in our lives and in the world. And we get to grow and multiply that. And I think Reiki demonstrates that. Like, oh my gosh, we just get to really multiply and magnify the good together. And so that would be my wish for anyone, is that you become empowered to realize how much we can grow good and the just profound healing impact it has.
And together, you know,
and together,
we talk about this all the time. We are so much better together.
Yes. Big cheers to that. Yeah, that's where the magic is, no doubt.
Totally. Christine, thank you so much for being here. I'm giving you a huge hug from here
We got to here right on back. Thank you so much for having me and for everyone tuning in and for everyone who's just turning up the volume of love and healing in the world.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. You've been watching Something Super Spiritual with Jeffrey Peck. This is my lovely guest, Christine Eartheart with joypotential.com. And you guys will be seeing you again next week with another exciting guest. Big love. Thank you again for listening to the Something Super Spiritual podcast. If you know someone who would enjoy this episode, please do share it with a friend. For show notes, links, and to purchase a mediumship reading, my website is somethingsuperspiritual.com. You can also easily subscribe and follow the show on your favorite app, sign up for my newsletter for bonus content, and to keep the conversation going, you can easily join the Facebook community. It's all right there at the website, somethingsuperspiritual.com. Signing off for now, namaste.